And now, please welcome to the stage Vice President of Revenue Management at Bob Evans, Carl Spedale.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am here to crash this supply chain party. So let's get into it. It's good to be home. I grew up on the northwest side of the city in a neighborhood called Dunning Square. Spent about a decade in Lakeview. And before we get into the presentation, let's make something perfectly clear. If you say you're from Naperville or Gary, Indiana, you are not from Chicago. We got that? Let's get that clear. A lot of my attachment to this city is not just because I grew up here, it's because I'm a huge sports fan. So as you look on the top left-hand side of the page there, that first picture requires no introduction. That's what a big three really looks like, by the way. Top right, it was great to be in the city to kick off the summers with the Stanley Cup runs that the Blackhawks had. 2016, I hold very dear in my heart because that's the year the Cubs broke the 100-year curse of the Billy Goat, right? And I also became a dad that year. Bottom right, huge Bears fan. I bet Ganesh is still having nightmares about that very play. Where is he? Who likes to shop? Wow, that's not a lot of people. Who likes a good deal? God, the people that didn't raise their hands, I love you. You're paying full price. That's a Rev Man person's dream. So what is revenue management? Revenue management got its start in the hotel and airline industry. It was a way for those industries to navigate a cost structure that was heavily leaned towards fixed. At some point, I suspect one of the big four consulting firms thought to themselves, we can take these into other industries. Let's start with consumer packaged goods. They have the same problem, right? Same application, same problem, different industry. So what do we do as revenue management? The pure definition, as I would put it, revenue management connects pricing, promotion, and portfolio strategy to drive profitable growth. A major part of our role within the function is to ensure that we spend our trade dollars effectively, that we're deliberate with those investments, we get a return on those investments with our retailers, and we're competitive within our markets. From a governance standpoint, that's a fancy way to say that we are ensuring that our field sales teams are running the strategy that we put out, and our retailers are also being compliant with that strategy. From pop to potatoes, spent over 11 years at PepsiCo in a variety of finance roles across the entirety of the P&L on the DSD side of the business. Got a call to stand up the revenue management function at Bob Evans, which is a subsidiary of Post Holdings. During the interview process, I handed our CEO and our CFO a one-pager that talked about how I would do that. How would I stand up a function that we don't have today? I knew where I needed to start to gain a solid foundation of our categories, our competitors, and just how our business worked. And where we started was a very practical and logical place. If you're bored and need to fall asleep at night, there's plenty of literature published out there that talks about promotional effectiveness and how CPGs don't know how to measure it, and they don't know if they're doing a good job at it either. They don't know what's working, they don't know what isn't working. So I'm going to take you through our journey through this framework, SCQ. Hopefully folks are familiar with that: situation, complication, and question, and what led us to Lyric at the end of the day. So when we started the work, we were auditing promotions one at a time. We had to go to a variety of different data sources, aggregate them into Excel, and get to our KPI. We use two main KPIs, financial return and cost per incremental. What does it cost to drive an incremental unit? It was pretty laborious, right? Sounds laborious? It definitely was. And we were also tracking those promotions manually. So we would do a promotion, we'd dump into a tracker, and then we have what we call a post-audit library that we'd refer back to see what was working and what was not working across different retailers, different markets. So as we did that, we understood that there were a ton of pain points. It took us 20 minutes to aggregate all that data, just to aggregate the data. We haven't even gotten to measurement. Then we measured, and then we spent time trying to understand why didn't it work. And the why is really complex. It could be how we priced it. It could be what happened from a competitive standpoint that week in ad. It could be our retailers aren't executing in store the way they should. We're not getting that secondary display away from where we normally sit in the store. And to add to those challenges, we have an archaic TPM system called Demantra. So not only is the data to do the job is scattered, our TPM system is really archaic. It just does not work for us. So what I have up on the screen here is the 6 places we had to go just to reference to get the data we needed. Circana, which gives us the data of the units that are being scanned through the register. Numerator, which tracks what ads retailers are running. It tells us if we were on the front page, the inside cover, the back cover. Subtleties that might tell us why a promotion worked or did not work. We had to reference financial reporting. Sometimes we'd go into Kroger's database and look at 8451 to get more of a precise answer. We had to go into Oracle, get our cost of goods. And then, of course, we had the drag of going into Demantra itself, which aesthetically is not the easiest system to use. To top it all off, these systems had mismatched names. Walmart has 3 different names across 3 different systems. And on top of that, the data composition was another challenge. What a week means from system to system is different. So Carl, how do we handle that? Well, me being a finance person, I had to ask, how do we scale a critical piece of work? Naturally, Excel, right? That was the first place to go. How do we go from one promotion to many? So what we did was we built the mapping in Excel. Everything I just showed you, the data composition, the 6 data sources. We created index matches, HLOOKUPs, VLOOKUPs. We got it to work. The problem was the right-hand side of the page. You'd open the file, it was slow to open, and it was slow to navigate through. That is an actual picture of our actual model, and that was about 3 minutes in to opening it there at 0%. So we did make progress, though. Our Excel model generated over 500 audits in one shot across our top retailers and across our top promoted groups. Sounds great, right? There's still a major gap to solve. Each time we wanted to refresh the data, it took us 90 minutes, and we still had over 9,000 promotions we had to deal with in our portfolio. So we were only scraping the surface of a much larger pool. So we already had Lyric in-house. They were working with our demand planning team. We had a trusted partner, we had a problem to solve, and trade promotions was the next logical place for us to attack as an organization. So we started to ask and dream, or at least I dreamed, because I'm weird like that, what could we build, and what could we turn that into, and what is that going to take? So this next session, I'm going to take you through how we laid the foundation of the work that we did with Lyric in 14 weeks. Data mapping. We knew this was going to be the most complex because we had done it in Excel already, right? We created our post-audit model, we mapped all the data, we got all the weeks aligned, we got all the naming conventions figured out. And cross-functionally, and with our partners at Lyric, we had to do a little bit of a trade teach-in. How do we get from gross revenue to net revenue? What's a scan versus a bill back? How do those definitions, why are those different? What's an ad fee, right? And then the next piece was the prove it piece. Can we get to our financial ROI calculation? Can we get to our cost per incremental calculation? And can we validate that everything's calculating correctly? We were successful, and we were lucky that we already had our Excel models, so we could benchmark against what we did in Lyric versus what we had offline that we had confidence in. And we were able to merge the two to attain a high degree of confidence that what Lyric was giving us was the truth. And then along the way, we figured out other process efficiencies that could be had with Lyric, primarily in the area of pricing administration. A field salesperson still has to go into a planning system and enter a promotion for a week. That's not going to go away. But what will help us become more efficient, someone on the back end still has to approve said promotion, and that falls on my team. So we were able to speed that process up as well. But the real key here was, as we scaled, we wanted to address the bottom 25% of the events that we could measure. I don't expect you guys to see this, but I wanted to show the complexity that it took to map and connect the internal data to the external data. And once we had that connected, we could take the link data and apply our analytics and get to action, which is the most important part. So now we've gone from auditing one at a time to 500 in an Excel model to 8,000 promotions. Yeah, it's exciting, right? Give me something. We were excited about it. So yes, we did create these fancy dashboards. We have Excel-like capability behind the scenes that helps us digest the data, and that helped us roll it out to the field sales team in a manner that made it digestible for them. What's great about these dashboards is that we can drop down by retailer, by product group. We have 3 years worth of history in here, so we get a firm grasp of what's performing well and what isn't. So instead of spending our time stitching together data from 6 different sources, we're spending our time analyzing what worked and what didn't. And immediate impact, most important part. We finished our business case with Lyric in February. We normally have a big planning conference in April to roll out next year's guidance, so we were able to hit that. So we put those data to good use at that conference. We identified the 2 worst performing promotions across a couple of our promoted groups or product groups, and we asked our field to do something they're not very comfortable with, which is something different. Let's not copy and paste the same promotional calendar year over year. This is the national guidance we published to them. We told them, redeploy those dollars into events that we know are working, migrate or change your price, or eliminate that poor performing week altogether. Now the benefits. We're reallocating our time. We've automated the work of measuring the promotional effectiveness at scale now. We spend way less time pulling the data, way more time analyzing the insights, putting those insights to action. And that allows us to reallocate our time to other things that are way more interesting to me from a RevMan perspective. If I had another 30 minutes, I could do another 30 minutes on price pack architecture, one of my favorite topics. If anyone's still curious, come find me. But those are the pieces that have been fundamental to us, the time reallocation, especially into other areas that are way more strategic. Keys to our success. We had the right team, and we had the right partner in Lyric. Internally, we had a dedicated IT resource in Kevin Schull, who's with us today. I love embarrassing my team, Kevin. And I'm fortunate enough to have someone on my team that not only has a finance background, but a data science background as well. And then again, we had a trusted partner in Lyric who listened to what we wanted, delivered a solution that worked for us, and they weren't just trying to sell us software. If I wanted that, I'd log into LinkedIn and check my messages, because I have plenty of messages on software selling items, right? But Lyric delivered a solution that really works for us and is scalable and easy to interpret and easy to roll out to a field sales team with a variety of capability. It's cliche, right? But you need executive sponsorship to make this happen, right? And make it a priority and not a side project. We lived the commitment week to week. We had consistent focus. We had dedicated resources. And we had the partnership to really bring this to life. Our goal was never just to have a dashboard. We wanted something that was actionable, insights-driven, and know that we could drive meaningful change to the organization that would benefit the bottom line. So what's next for us? In the short term, you notice we talked about 10,000 promotions, and we're at 8,000 promotions. So there's a group of retailers that I'd call data dark. So if anyone's from Texas or Oklahoma and knows HEB, they don't sell their data to a Circana or a Nielsen. We'd like to integrate that data. There's also a problem with tackling the distributors that go into mom and pop shops across the country that we deliver to. Those are going to require very different methodologies from the customers that do sell their data. We've also talked about fully integrating retailer-specific data, such as Kroger's 8451. The benefit there is, if you go back to data composition, 8451 will give us the exact ad break. Kroger normally breaks their ad on a Wednesday, runs through a Tuesday. IRI Circana weeks end on a Sunday. So this gives us just another layer of precision that we haven't had today. Another piece that I think is important that we've talked about at length in the office is how do we think about shopper spend? We generally provide guidance to the field that we say, hey, if we're going to spend money to run a promotion, let's not overlay shopper. We know that doesn't work from a financial payout perspective. What we want to really do is bridge weeks in between promotions with shopper. So now our next point is how do we optimize that calendar for the field where we have a combination of promotion and shopper events. And then governance. Governance, not how I described it before. This one's evolving to me. If you kept up with the news, or as you shop, you've noticed a lot more digital tags in store, correct? Walmart, Kroger's rolled out more digital tags. What we as an org want to do is make sure that during peak hours, they're not pricing up or margining up on our business and not squeezing us for another point or 2 points of margin on an annualized basis. So a little bit of pricing police, but it's also keeping our retailers in line with what we expect from a pricing perspective. Long term, to me, it's all about optimization. And I think of it in two ways. There's pricing optimization, which I describe as base and promotional pricing at a market level. And that will vary across the country, right? Because you're in a different share position in different parts of the country. Your category may not be as developed. You may have a different competitive presence that you're dealing with, et cetera. And then to me, there's business optimization, what I'd call business optimization. When things like a war in Iran breaks out and oil spikes to $112 a barrel, what do you do with all that cost? How do you absorb all that cost? How do you deal with it through pricing? That's where business optimization comes in. To me, it gives you a more dynamic and more flexible way to go to market from a pricing perspective as you need it. There may be times in certain quarters where you might be chasing units or volume or share, or in other quarters, again, in the Iran war example, where you need margin recovery. So that flexibility, I think, to me, is key going forward. I want to thank my Bob Evans team, Lyric, for bringing our vision to life, and thank you for the time today.